Hello and welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. If you're listening to the audio, we welcome you. I'm your host, Steve Green. Happy to be with you. If you're watching the video, we're happy to have you join us on our YouTube channel, 5-Alarm Task Force Corp.org. And we want to thank, first of all of those who participated in our webinar last week on the May Day. What do I do? May Day, we had over 70 registrants and we raised about $1,500 for our nonprofit 5-Alarm Task Force Corp that goes to help our brothers and sisters in the fire service and hopefully eventually other first responders in need. And it is a pleasure to welcome back a returning guest, Chief Charles Werner. Chief Charles Werner, he joins us every time there's great new tech news breaking in the fire service. And now, not just for the fire service, but for all first responders, because a good part of what he's doing now, he is currently the director, let's bring it up, he is currently director of Drone Responders, the Public Safety Alliance. And as many of you must know, that drones are now being used in all aspects of fire rescue, EMS, law enforcement, search and rescue, wildland firefighting. It's an amazing and quickly growing side of our tech. But let me tell you a little bit about our good friend, Chief Werner. He was chief with the Charlottesville Fire. He is currently Charlottesville Fire Chief Emeritus. He served 44 years in the fire service, 37 with the Charlottesville Fire Department, serving the last 10 years as their fire chief, retiring in 2015. Chief Werner recently served as the acting deputy state coordinator and senior advisor with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, where he helped to facilitate VDEM's UAS program. Chief Werner also helped facilitate the Albemarle County Sheriff's Office SAR team. He served as the first chair of the National Fire Protection Association Multidiscipline Technical Committee on Public Safety UAS Standards. Chief Werner presently serves as a public safety drone coordinator with the Virginia Department of Aviation, a member of the AUVSI Trusted Operator Program Steering Committee, chair of the International Public Safety Association UAS Committee, SAE 30 Public Safety UAS Standards Committee, chair of the National Council on Public Safety UAS, and he is also a certified FAA Part 107 remote pilot. Chief Werner has served on numerous national public safety organizations. He presently serves on the International Association of Fire Chiefs Technology Council, the National Alliance for Public Safety GIS Foundation Board, and on the National Information Sharing Consortium Advisory Council. Chief Werner is a contributing editor for Firehouse Magazine with over 100 nationally published articles. He also initiated the original development of firehouse.com, especially for those of us who are old enough to remember when that magazine came out. Chief, it's a pleasure to welcome you back to the show.
Steve, we're really going to have to do something about shortening that intro. It almost put me to sleep.
Well, it's well deserved, sir. It's well deserved, knowing
Thanks.
you now as long as I do.
And thanks for the honor to be here. It's always great to be with you, Steve.
Thank you. It's always our pleasure to have you. And I guess the most important reason why we love having you is because there's so many breakthroughs in technology when you visit us every 6 months or so that we actually fill the entire broadcast with this great information for our brothers and sisters and first responders throughout the country and internationally as well. So why don't we kick off with the drone responders? I get their bulletin every Sunday. I read through as much as I can. I love reading it. I love seeing what it is. You know, those of us, if you watch local news or national news, you know, they're all using drones now. Reality television production is using drones now. It's become a big deal. But the best part is the UAS and I guess the private operator, which expanded into public safety as well. That's done so well for us as a public service to the people we serve in our communities.
So let me talk about drone responders. You know, we talked a while back, and I shared some early successes. Drone Responders Public Safety Alliance is the leading and now an award-winning public safety UAS nonprofit program to support public safety unmanned aircraft system programs. In 2020, in October, we received the AUVSI International First Place Public Safety Award for the work that we've done over this past year.
Congratulations.
And I think when we last talked, I don't know if we were around 1,000 members or what, but we started in April of 2019. And as of today, we just went over 3,400 members.
Wow.
From around the country. And actually, we had originally designed drone responders to be focused on the United States. That's kind of the core of what we're working on.
Sure.
And we now have participation from 47 countries. So we had to create an international advisory council just to start hearing globally. Are the things that are happening over there the same as over here? And what I'm pleased to say right now is that the United States leads the world in public safety UAS usage. We did a study in the spring of 2020, and we found that there are now more than 17 public safety use cases of drones. Imagine that.
Wow.
When I wrote my first article for Firehouse Magazine, I wrote that I thought there might be 7 ways that drones would be used in public safety. And to my surprise and to being pleased, it's being used in almost every aspect of public safety now, because it gives you that, when you're looking at situational awareness, Steve, from a fire service, we're always talking about 360,
Right.
But there's a whole lot more that you can't see when you're not looking from above. Now the drone, in a couple different aspects, gives you that view of, one, where is everything? What's it look like? Are there conditions that I'm not aware of that I'm not seeing on the ground? And it's just changing that whole dynamic. And if you can now imagine, visually you can see, but now flip over to a thermal image view, and you're able to see the heat signature coming from a building. So you can actually see when a roof doesn't have the integrity to hold a firefighter, which means we don't put somebody on a roof in a dangerous situation that we otherwise didn't know. In addition to that, we have, often have smoky conditions that we have an elevated stream, and we're trying to apply it to a building, and we think we're hitting in the right place, but we're not. And now the drone can actually see through the smoke and show that the water is hitting the fire. And it just goes on and on. And rather it's that or wildfires, we're now seeing it that they're using it to do analytical inspections in advance of fires to determine what the fuel loads are, to do mitigation efforts. Then we're seeing them being used during the fire to look to see where the fire line is, and is the fire line they put in place stopping the fire from spreading, even dropping incendiary devices now to create backfires by the drone, so they can go out and fly these lines and drop the like the dragon eggs, and it does that backfire, which before you would have had people walking doing a drip line.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be done anymore. So it's kind of crazy. And now we're starting to see drones going into the whole part of extinguishment of wildfires. So we're going to start seeing above 55-pound drones that can carry maybe even up to a ton of water or suppressant, and be able to fly 24 hours a day to make precise fire attacks, and even be able to fly through rough weather and smoke incursions where you can't see, where the manned aircraft can't fly in those conditions.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's dramatic. Hazmat, Southern Manatee, Florida, we may have talked about this before, but they don't go into hazmat until the drone's up. The drone does the first assessment. It says, is it even safe for us to enter? They can look at it from a thermal perspective. They can fly in with remote sensors and determine what it is that they're dealing with. They had one of their original fires that kind of stood out was a sulfur fire, that they were able to fly over and see the hot spots of where the sulfur was burning, which you couldn't have otherwise seen. So I mean, it goes on, and so now we've now gone over 3,400 members. It continues to grow exponentially. We're having new projects that we're working on. We're working in partnership with ASTM International, a standards body about developing and actually improving the remote requirements for remote pilots for public safety. So that we're creating some standards by which now we have a lot of people that say they train public safety, but we don't know what that means. And typically it means they train somebody in public safety and nothing bad happened. What we want to know is that you're teaching to a specific content. And I think that's where we're seeing all these things change. But I'll stop here and give you a minute to see if there's something specific you'd like to ask, because I could go on probably for the entire hour of all the different things that we're seeing in the space.
Well, one of the things I want to ask is, do you see that as you develop these guidelines and for the program, do you feel that NFPA is going to be playing its part in creating an NFPA standard for the fire service use of the drones?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I reached out to NFPA and asked them, what are your plans on the near term? Because I was the first chair. And of course, I have an interest in growing that because of the fire protection side of things in the fire service. But right now, NFPA is going through a reorganization. And they're focusing, as many people are during this COVID time, is they're focusing on where they can most benefit from the codes that need to be upgraded and can bring in revenue to the organization. So this is not top on the priority list.
Right.
So ASTM had actually reached out to NFPA to see if there was any issue if we continued the process on the ASTM side, and they indicated there was no issue. So we're going to try to take off where NFPA left off. NFPA says they will come back to the standard at some point when they've gotten past this reorganization and the hardships and those kind of things. So we'll be looking forward to back re-engaging them later.
That'll be good. That'll be good. I know with the when you mentioned the thermal imaging benefits through a drone, I know our good mutual friend, Battalion Chief Andy Starnes, must have been smiling when his ears tingled a little bit when you said that, because Andy is, just such a great instructor about tick use and how important it is in all matters. And he was a great speaker. He was the closing presenter at our webinar last week. And, to know now that we can put a good quality tick on a drone and give the incident commander more information than he or she has ever been able to have before, as you said, beyond the 360. They may have made a 360, may have made 1.5 360s, but that drone gives them more information. And like you said, that part about the roof is very key, because sometimes we don't know how much is cooking underneath that roof. And sadly enough, this occurred just a week ago in Oklahoma, when the gas fire, we lost two brothers, the chief and the firefighter of Winoka Fire Department in Oklahoma. So our hearts go out to their families, and we always say that may the memories always be for a blessing. But hopefully, new technology, as it gets deeper into the fire service, we don't know about small departments probably having a much more difficult time to get up to speed with a lot of the other departments. But as we see it progress and evolve, we're going to see hopefully less and less of those kind of tragedies, because that camera and that drone is up there feeding that IC the information that he or she needs.
So let's talk about those small departments for a minute. One, it's harder for a small department organization, especially a volunteer organization, to really get into doing a full drone program because of everything that's required. Flying and buying the drone are the two easiest things you're going to do. It's the other stuff that comes with it. It's the policies, the procedures, the flight logs, the maintenance, the training, all those things to keep you up to proficiency. But what I want to talk a little bit about today that's a little bit different is the Tier 1 drone program. This has kind of been initiated or kind of identified by LA City Fire, David Danielson, who works out there, that I work with as well. They're putting in place, as is York County Fire and Rescue in Virginia, and actually in FDNY, I think, is also doing some experimentation, a tethered drone operation, which can be launched by a single button push. It can go up and give you both visual optics and thermal imagery, and it can be transmitted directly to an incident commander. And that tether means that it has continuous power. You don't have to change batteries. But here's the kicker. In order to use this, you don't have to have a certificate of authorization, and you don't have to be certified as a remote pilot. So now you've taken away all these other requirements, and you can pull up at the scene of an incident. In most cases, we don't need to be flying around everywhere to see what's going on. We just need to be positioned in the right place to get it at 150 feet to give us that bird's eye view.
Sure.
And look. So now you can actually do this from the apparatus, and Pierce Manufacturing has created what's called the situational awareness system, to where it can be launched from the cab of a vehicle, from the top of a roof, from a side compartment, or it can be in a case that it can be moved around from place to place. So LA City Fire is looking at, or they're exploring the possibility of putting one of these tethered drones on every one of their battalion chief buggies.
Wow.
so that when they get there, they can automatically push one button and have a bird's eye view before anything else happens. And so you immediately have eyes on a much bigger situation. And just think about that. You're able to put that up and take that imagery and capture it. So you can actually do different snapshots through the event because you can record all this.
Mhm.
So then afterwards, you can see where your apparatus was positioned, what happened at certain points during the fire, where your people are moving around, hose line placements, just a lot of things that we never could do before. So what I bring this up is because this becomes an affordable way for those volunteer fire companies out there that want to be able to do something in the drone world, but not really get into a full-blown drone program.
And these tethered drones are less expensive than the free flying ones.
I really can't get into the price too much of them. I think they might be a little bit more, but one of the things that's really good when you're buying fire apparatus, as you know, is it's easy to combine that into the purchase and then put it in your overall financing. So it's another way of getting one of those tools that you want to have, just like thermal image cameras. We ended up as we bought our fire apparatus, and I'll go back to that thermal image camera days when I was here. The Charlottesville Fire Department was the first fire department in the country to equip every first line apparatus position with a thermal image camera.
Wow.
So because we just saw the value of those eyes in the zero visibility just being critical to being effective and saving lives. So this is the same kind of thing. We have this opportunity to have a tool that can be used by of departments of different sizes. So
That's
as
good.
your listeners are out there, you have a lot of volunteers that listen. There are some options.
That's important for them to know because many of them might not know. And that's probably one of the things I'll pass along to and he may know already, but to Steve Hurst, the chairman of the NVFC. He was just on several weeks ago. We had a great interview. And I'm having started in your time in the volunteer fire service and having my time was in the volunteer fire service. It always, I mean, I love all my brothers and sisters, but the volunteers are a little bit more dear to me because I know what it's like to be out there and have a real job and then have to go out and do that. And of course, we know we're having difficulties with getting enough volunteers in our departments today. But I
And
think
just so you know, I wanted, sorry to interrupt you for a second, but we're also partners with NVFC. So we've actually done a webinar on this for the
oh, great.
NVFC, but I know you have different listeners as well. And I want to make sure your listeners know that there's opportunities out there.
That's good to know. Plus our international listeners, they may not know about the advance of the tethered drones yet. And this will be important for them to know for their fire departments. We have listeners from Canada to the UK to Australia, New Zealand, Seoul, South America. So I think all of us who are dedicated to the task of the fire service always are looking for the best tools we can to do the job, to keep us safe and help us keep our community safe as well. And to know that a tool like this is available is going to be very important, I think, to all the listeners and viewers who watch that. And I think, it's funny, it only takes a moment to think back. It's probably a decade already, but to think back when the first little remote gyrocopters came out. They were on TV, the little commercials, and they were maybe about 3 inches long, and they're more like angry hornets than anything else. But that's pretty cool, a little drone. And of course, people have been flying model planes and helicopters for years. But I think the drone just brought a whole new technology to bear. And it was just a perfect match to hook up the drone technology with the fire service and first responders altogether, all our emergency services.
Well, and as you know, I've kind of been in technology throughout my career,
Yes.
so that's kind of what I've been doing. It's been interoperability, land mobile radios, computers, tablets, internet of things, GIS, broadband, FirstNet.
Yep.
And the thing that I found out as I retired, it all converged.
Yeah.
To where now we're flying drones that are actually getting imagery that's being put down on a layer into GIS that's being streamed through FirstNet to tablets in the field to anybody who wants to see it. So it's kind of amazing to be in this space where all the things that I've been working on have kind of come together and in the drone world. And I will tell you, when it comes to drones and public safety and the fire services specifically, we know there are four things that basically drones do for us. Number one, the first and most important thing is they enhance our safety because they show us those things we don't know. The second thing is it helps improve our operational effectiveness because we're making decisions based on better information. And then third, it's providing us that real-time situational awareness of what is occurring at this moment that is now impacting my firefighters on the ground or my responders who are in this particular incident. And then last, one of the really interesting things that's helping us is in recovery, is we're able to monitor as things are coming back to normal. We can see when roads are now reopened, when waters have receded. And it helps us see when we're starting to do cleanup. Again, it gives us that deeper view and understanding of our community and where we are at any given time. And most importantly, right after the storms and those kind of things hit, tornadoes or whatever it might be, they tell us very quickly how bad is bad. Mm-hmm. And before, weather still may have prevented manned aircraft from being up, we're able to see things very quickly.
I think we saw that with Harvey in the Houston area right away. We saw those, whether it was the network or public safety using the drones to get up there and give us those views. And you mentioned that most important point that our mutual friend, Dr. Richard Gassaway, would say is that gives us that special situational awareness that we just can't get from being on the ground. And
yeah, I did a program with him talking just about that to share, because I saw his program and I said, I got to reach out to Rich because this is so relevant to what he's preaching. He's got a great show as well. To where, yeah. So I mean, all these things, your show, his show, others, the way to spread this word of getting things out. But I will tell you, this past year has been really exciting from one perspective. We've been working very closely with the FAA, and we were working with Chula Vista Police Department out in California, and we were part of their integration pilot program that was part of the FAA's advancement. How do you get this stuff advancing? And we were working with Skydio as well, to where we now are able to do what's called a tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver. That means that in a hazmat situation, we, for the first time, can fly 1,500 feet beyond visual line of sight of the drone without a visual observer to be able to monitor those situations where the remote pilot and the visual observer are not in harm's way. This was a huge change for the FAA. And it was such a significant change that we as drone responders issued a commendation to the FAA for their efforts of moving this forward, because whether it's a hazmat situation or an active shooter situation, we obviously can't have the remote pilot out somewhere he or she can be shot.
Right, sure.
So now we can fly around the buildings, over the buildings to 1,500 feet, within 50 feet of the building. So we're still within non-navigable airspace. So we're safe flying. And as I said to the FAA, if we've got an airplane flying in 50 feet from a building, we got a bigger problem than that drone. So the FAA, and it really became an ongoing conversation over the past year of understanding what the FAA wanted to have in place to ensure the safety in the national airspace, as well as helping us meet our operational needs in these very, very dangerous situations. So this year is the first year we've got it, but it's important to note that if people listening to your program have a drone program, if they don't have a certificate of authorization or a COA, they can't utilize this tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver. So if they're operating as just Part 107 remote pilots, they're going to need to get a COA. And I would say that a COA, a blanket COA, can be achieved very quickly, very easily through the FAA's website in 3 or 4 days. Wow. So go ahead and get one of those COAs so that you can make use of this new tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver.
That kind of brings to mind something that we've brought out a couple of times here and on different shows on different topics, but I think it applies here, is that as you've heard also, as each generation has come up behind the previous one, there's usually a little grumbling. They don't know anything. They don't know what they're doing. And recently, within the last couple of years, there was a lot of stuff on social media about, well, this new generation, these kids don't know, they have no idea about fire stuff and things like that. Well, number one, when I joined the volunteer fire department, which was totally by chance, I know how to use a screwdriver, a hammer, and a drill. I could put gas in my car. I could check the dipstick for my oil, but that was as much as I could do really to service my vehicle. That's all I knew about it. When I joined the fire department, the mentor that we had, my buddy and I, didn't just teach us about our fire apparatus, the firehouse policies and procedures. He taught us about kind of life of what it is, and helped us learn more about being mechanical and why it's needed in the fire service. So I said in a couple of these posts that if you before you put before you put your mouth into gear, before engaging your brain, you may want to think about who's flying our drones in the Middle East right now. These 22, 23-year-old kids who played video games since they were 4 years old, and they have terrific hand-eye coordination, and they can fly these things upside down with their eyes closed. These are the new up-and-comers into our fire service. And I think it's imperative that we bring them in and make them feel welcome and comfortable, and teach them what they need to do for the fire service as they teach us what they know about electronics and drone and hand-eye coordination for, even for if we were using a remote, the new radio remotes for a ladder apparatus, something like that, that you still need to be able to know what you're doing with that. The old style firefighter who could grab the irons and climb a ladder is good for one job, but another job we may need a remote operator for that ladder tower, and we want to make sure we have somebody who's qualified and is comfortable doing that, because we probably have somebody up in the basket or at the tip of that ladder. So I think this is a great way to see that as we continue to evolve as emergency services, we find new and better ways that either our environment makes us deal with, or that we find on our own to help our communities. And I think that anybody who wants to step forward to be a part of those emergency services to help their community, I think it's incumbent upon us, just like we were given a chance, because we were all rookies one day. Nobody ever was born a firefighter, that we give them that chance and be willing to teach them and inspire them to use their knowledge and grow with our knowledge to make a better fire service or law enforcement or EMS, whatever we're doing, to help protect our communities. And I think this kind of experience and information is perfectly puts those generations together.
Well, and to your point, when it comes to drones, a lot of our millennials and the younger population in the public safety in general, as well as the fire service, is they take on to this technology very quickly. They have the hand-eye coordination. They're able to fly these drones easily. I'll give you an example with my son. I came home and my first drone was a Parrot Bebop drone, and it was really controlled by the controls were the phone. They had to use your fingers back and forth on the phone, and I fumbled with that and got frustrated. And my son comes out and picks it up and goes, "Oh," and he'd never seen any of it, and just is flying this drone like that. I said, "Give me my phone back. Go back inside." But to the point is, they have these skills. This is how they've grown up, and they've experienced all this. And one of the things that when I was the fire chief that I tried to encourage was for all these younger firefighters coming in and have this new technology knowledge is come in and tell us how we can implement this into our department. I mean, we had 3 guys that came to me with an idea about iPads on fire apparatus. And we had computers on the apparatus before, but if you've had any experiences with it, by the time you open the computer and you turn it on, if you're in a city situation, you're on the scene before the computers even come on and got you into the information.
Right.
Where the iPad now is immediately taking your GPS location and showing all the fire apparatus on the iPad. It's showing me the hydrant locations, and I can push a button and see the stuff, and it's on already. So it was these 3 firefighters that brought the idea. We tested it on 3 apparatus, and now it's on every piece. So it's it's those kind of things. And now with the drone technology is the same. Is now we have not only the drone flying, but we have the imagery come in, and now we want to put it onto a GIS layer so that we can actually show the imagery from a flight perspective over on a map. And this is being done out in California, where Greg Kretzinger, who's on our drone responders board as well, has gone out and taken that imagery to take the damage shots of these totally devastated communities. Well, if you don't put it on some kind of map with geographic references, you can't tell where you are because everything's gone.
Right.
The homes, the streets, the signs, and it all blends into the same thing. And what's important with that is as devastating as it is, that information needs to be out there to the people that have been evacuated, have no idea what their circumstances are. They want to know where they are. What's their search situation? What do they have to be doing next? And the same thing is true is that information shared quickly with insurance companies. So it means those people that have lost their homes now are talking more quickly with the insurance companies. The claims are going through faster. But again, it's that knowledge of drones, imagery, GIS, thermal, streaming video. These kids live it.
Right.
As well as social media is get these younger people involved and help you promote things on social media
Absolutely.
to your department's operations and the stuff with the drones, the positive stuff of what drones are going. Because one of the things that we've also found is that you have got to communicate effectively with your community before you start any drone program. You need to let them know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and more specifically, what you're not going to do. You're not going to be doing random surveillance. Do a demonstration. In fact, Drone Responders in its resource center, which is accessible to anyone. Anybody can join Drone Responders. It's free. The resource center has the largest compilation of SOPs, training manuals, task books, you name it, it's there. But we also have an outreach program that's designed for you to customize for your department, to walk you through having town hall meetings, having demonstrations, and doing all that. So you don't even have to sit down and figure out how to do it. We've already got it. All you have to do is put your name into it and then follow the plan. And that's what we're trying to do is this tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver. We work with the FAA. We created a template so that said, if you want this waiver, here's the process. So in our resource center under the waiver section, you can pull that template up, put your department's name into it, and send it in. We now have over 100 departments that have used that template successfully to get to tactical waiver, because we know what the FAA is looking for. They're giving us that guidance. We're providing that to our fire service people and our responders, and they're able to use that. So that's all we're trying to do, is be a clearinghouse to help people get what they need and move quickly forward with the program.
Sure. And that's a good point, because I had been working in video since I was in middle school. And when I got into my two departments, I set up a video unit for them. And they said, well, what do we need it for? They said, well, number one, you can use it for training. And then you have this VHS had just come out. I had started learning on old 2-inch videotape, and editing was manually.
Careful now, you're starting to date yourself.
I know. It's been a long time, but we were able to do that for the first one in North Carolina. And then when I got up to the Syracuse area, we actually put the new mini system into our heavy rescue so we could have that on the scene. And we used, again, same thing. I, because of my injury, since I couldn't fight fire anymore, I was in charge of the video unit. We'd film active calls. I would stay out of the way and film the calls. Then we'd come back and review them, just like a football team or a baseball team looks at their game. We could see what we did right. We could have done that better. That didn't look very well. And then it became, something that's very common in the fire service today. They have people who are either can't or don't want to fight fire, but they want to help serve the community and the fire service. So they do video for that department. And I think this whole thing is that we need to keep our eyes open and our hearts open to people who want to help and who might have the skills to give and are willing to give to the community and to the various departments. So I think that's a great point. And I'm so glad to hear that there's so much happening, because I still think it's in its basically, I wouldn't say infancy, but it's a toddler age. I think it has nowhere to go but more advanced, and the more advanced it becomes, the better it's going to help our communities.
Well, I think all that we're doing now is we're starting to learn how drones can make a difference. And what's changing next is we're going to start seeing the one big thing that we're going to see a change in is once we have really good detect and avoid technology. When that technology meets a certain level, it means then we're going to start seeing a certain level of autonomy where you can fly. And I'm not sure if we talked about the Chula Vista program last time or not, but Chula Vista's program is called Drone as a First Responder. And they dispatch a drone, they launch a drone at the immediate time of a call. Mm. And they started off on the police department, and typically it arrives on the scene first in 115 seconds. And it provides immediate overview of what's happening at the scene, which does a couple things. One, it can determine very quickly if a ground police patrol unit is needed or not. And in a lot of cases, they can tell you the exact number. They've been able to release ground units and put them back in service.
Wow.
From a police perspective. So, or it's been where they had a situation of a domestic between a man and a woman, a former girlfriend, boyfriend, and it became more serious where the guy was on a motorcycle, the woman was in a car, and she was trying to run over him. So they immediately increased the priority of the call, and they were able to stop the situation, but they had also captured everything on video, so they could show everything that happened from the point that it started till the time that they stopped it. One of the probably the most compelling cases is they had a report of a person with a gun they thought was sitting outside of a restaurant acting peculiar at one of the outside tables, and the drone was there. The police are moving in. Of course, this is very tense. Person with a gun, kind of acting strange. You know, these days it's very dangerous for law enforcement. And they were able to take the drone and zoom in, and they were actually able to watch close enough to where they learned that he had a cigarette lighter gun. Cigarette lighter. Well, that flips the switch. The de-escalation comes in place. The police officers walk in very calmly and ask the guy, look, put that away. You're making people nervous, and be on their way. So it de-escalated a situation that could have otherwise entered in, it possibly had been a fatal tragedy.
Sure.
Just because he might have pointed the gun at a police officer that looked like a gun and been shot and killed. So there's all that. Then the fire department now has gotten involved, and they very quickly, like in the first days that they started using it, they had an EMS call out in the field, and they weren't sure where the people were because it was reported in between buildings. Well, the drone got there and said, here's where they are. They could see the video. They could see how many people there were, what it was, and really see that it was a safe situation they were walking into. Again, dramatically changing the situation. So imagine that on hazmat, on a traffic accident, on a structure fire. If it gets there first and they've reported smoke in a building, and the drone gets there and you've got fire coming out a window or a person hanging out a window, that information is then quickly transmitted and can be seen by the fire officers on the scene or by people in the dispatch center. And so again, instantaneous situational awareness that changes the whole circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the things when you and I first started putting this together before we had to postpone it because of my illness last fall was, I think you have some breaking news on the XYZ.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Beyond the drones now.
Huh?
Beyond drones.
Beyond drones. All right. So folks, we're going to take a quick break. If you're watching the video, you won't notice anything. If you're listening to the audio, we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. And welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force with my returning host and friend, Chief Charles Werner. And we've been talking about his work with drone responders and how much of a difference drones are making now in public service and the safety services, all the way from a local fire department, all the way up to wildland firefighters and urban firefighters, police, and EMS, another emergency. And of course, we know, no doubt, our military uses them to such wonderful advantage as well. And now we're going to go back to a topic we probably talked about well over a year ago, and it was what the chief and I recall to XYZ. Now it's going to take you back to your days in geometry. And if you don't remember geometry, it might be a little confusing at first, but the chief will make it clear. But this new XYZ technology will be, if not already is, a lifesaver, especially when we do interior work and working fire, cave rescue, a lot of things like that. So, Chief, why don't you tell our listeners and viewers about the newest evolutions of the XYZ technology, please.
Yeah, so we're all pretty familiar with XY, of showing us where on the map we are from an XY coordinate position. But one of the things that's eluded us over the years, and probably the most critical for the fire service in particular, is the Z component. The Z component is the elevation. So being able to see a firefighter who's down now and being able to quickly see both X and Y in a building where the person is, but now on a floor level, becomes really, really important. And I know that, as I've said many times before, when you hear the call of Mayday, that's the fire chief's worst nightmare.
Right.
That's when chaos ensues, and it takes a little bit of time to get things back in order and try to figure out where is the firefighter, and how do we get to him more quickly, and more importantly, how can we see where the rescues are in relation to the firefighter? It's not just where the firefighter is, but now we have X, Y, and Z components on all the public safety as we move forward. So I was out in San Jose and able to see NextNav is actually putting this forward, and they say that I think by the end of this year they'll be in 50 of the top markets, the biggest cities in the country. And so that's where some of our bigger problems are, is in the really larger metropolitan areas with big buildings and chances for us to get lost. What's exciting with that is that in San Jose, I was able to go into a building with a device on me and go up the steps to the 11th floor, walk down the floor, and be able to tell you from a scanned building and a floor plan exactly what room I was in front of. Now that is a game changer for us in public safety. So another element that comes with the X, Y, and Z is that we will also be able to apply this to 911 callers. So oftentimes you get 911 calls from inside large metropolitan cities in big buildings, and they don't know where they are. Now you'll be able to actually see that X, Y, and Z. I can see where you are, and as rescuers are making their way through the building, you can see their location as the caller. So let's imagine a picture that you've got the caller now is a black symbol. So it shows up on it as a black dot. A firefighter is red, EMS is yellow, and police is blue. So now you can start seeing a division in the forces that are out there and how they're making their way to a caller. Now, let me complicate that a little bit more. Now, let's imagine that we're going into the Las Vegas shooting, and we've got shots fired, people injured. And so now we want to say, who's here? And we flip the switch and we see the map, and we can see where the firefighters that are there, where the EMS people that are there that may be on duty or off duty, because we can use their own personal devices to capture this information, because it uses a barometric pressure setting. Now they're looking at creating some other technologies that would be worn by responders that's more ruggedized and can work through different types of conditions and that kind of stuff, because it's got to be something that's on all the time. It's with you. I know in conversations they were asking me as we're going through designing this, is this something that we want to have to turn on? And I said, no, you don't want to think about this. You want this to be on, because at any given time we can be on a situation like in the Charleston 9, where they had the big collapse. They were inside the building, had no idea that a fire was burning so heavily above them. And then the weight of, I think, air conditioning units or whatever caused a collapse on them. So you want that on all the time to know. So what this does is it not only tells you where they are, but it also provides breadcrumbs, kind of little dots of the path that they took to get there. So if everything's gone the way that you know it, you'll be able to see their path of travel up to the point that whatever that event happened, either they got injured, they lost air, or they were in a collapse situation. But now let's go back to that Las Vegas. You've got the shooting, you've got people down. You can see where your people are. You can see the color codes of police, fire, EMS, and a caller. In this case, you know that the police are traversing up the steps to make their way to where the shooter is. So as an overall incident commander of that might be a law enforcement person, but you're able to see your police officers moving their way up and where they are without the first word being said. And if there is one that gets injured or down, you're able to see where they are, and then send people in that direction and watch people to see when they're making their way close to where that person is, or direct them. No, you're still not this way. You need to move in this direction. So that's what the X, Y, and Z is about. And I think it's down to, I believe it was 3 meters of accuracy. Wow. So changing from hearing somebody say they're going down and you going by the estimation of where you thought they were at a given time to a more precise location, to me has been the holy grail that we've been waiting for. And this, in my opinion, can only get better.
I couldn't agree more, because I can think of a dozen instances right now from news or experience where we could have used that kind of information. First comes to mind is the Worcester, our loss in Worcester in 1999. if you know that in that kind of technology, we would have known exactly where each firefighter was. We knew exactly where to go and to get them. And I don't know if we were using taglines back in '99, but I know we use them now. But and then have a way out to get them out. So again, we need to lean on this and understand where it's coming from to help us and to make our jobs safer for anybody involved in public safety. And I think that's great. Now, you also mentioned, though, that this is going to be this is kind of part and parcel with FirstNet.
Yes.
And if you would please, could you give a little explanation to our listeners and viewers what FirstNet is? We see the commercials now because it's been activated in certain markets, and explain to them what it is and how it does help us, please.
Yeah, so following 9/11, one of the 9/11 reports revealed that we had a problem of interoperability in communications as networks failed when buildings collapsed and that type of thing. And one of the things that we often utilize is our cell phones. To start off with, we'll talk about cell phones specifically, but if you've ever gone to a large event and you've decided that you want to take a picture or a video or something and send it, and you suddenly find yourself stalled, your phone stalls because you've entered into a situation where the bandwidth can no longer support the capacity of people that are there. What FirstNet does is it identifies you as a responder by a SIM card in the device. And it can be in a device, it can be a smartphone, it can be a smart tablet, it can be a Cradle Point or a Sierra wireless device. And it recognizes it to the point where it gives you priority, and here's the kicker, and preemption. So if you're in a situation in a network that you need to have capabilities, it says, I see you're trying to get in, I'm going to kick somebody else off that's not a responder. But in addition to that, we also have band 14, which is band 14 specific to public safety, which means there's more responders on band 14, although it does allow it to be used for some commercial use. But again, the preemption prevents the network from being blocked by too many people on it at any given time. So that's the game changer for us there. Now, what that means, probably on a broader scale, in addition to phone calls, is the priority data. Is that when we're trying to stream video from a drone, or we're trying to stream video from inside a building, or we're trying to do remote sensing, or we're trying to just use our data that we're looking at. We might be monitoring the SCBA level, but air levels in the SCBA bottles, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff, as long as it's on one of those network devices that's identified as FirstNet, will always be able to get through. And it's a public-private partnership between FirstNet.gov, the official site under the Department of Commerce, and AT&T. AT&T is the one entered into the contract to build the network, and what they did is they said, we're going to build on our existing network. And what was interesting from the start of the AT&T proposal is before band 14 was built out, which means you have to have transmitters put out with that band 14 on all those towers. They did something that was extraordinary. Is they said, we're going to do this now. We're going to make our entire network and our entire spectrum available for public safety, even before we get band 14 out, so that we can identify who you are and give you priority and preemption, which kind of flipped the paradigm of saying, we've got to wait until every tower is built out. And now I think we're seeing upwards of 2 million subscribers across the country that are public safety. We saw that FBI is now, there was a contract with the FBI switching over to FirstNet, so they have that priority and preemption because, you know, when you get in a major event, in and of itself, you've got a capacity issue. Now get into a major event that becomes an incident. So you're at a major event with lots of people, like the Las Vegas shooting. You're not going to be able to get through on a normal phone because all the bandwidth is going to be usurped by everybody trying to call somebody else.
Right, right. As sadly, we just went through this week here in South Florida, where two brave FBI agents lost their lives.
Terrible.
And 3 others were wounded. And but again, this new technology can serve a tremendous purpose for those of us dedicated to public safety. Now, does everybody have to be a AT&T subscriber for this to work? You do.
Yes,
So,
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be an AT&T subscriber.
Yeah, and there were discussions about, did we, is there a way that we make this interoperable across different networks? And from the very beginning, and even in Verizon's early mentions, they said, really, it needs to be a single network to maintain the integrity, the security, the login authority, those kind of things. You've got to have that to make sure you can't have multiple systems to
Right, that makes sense.
security.
Yeah, it makes sense. I did see them at a conference a little over a year ago that I was teaching at, and spoke with the representative, and they were. I will say that they had some very nice offers for people to sign up with them for the FirstNet service, because this was a fire conference, and it was a good place for them to. This was just kicking off, and the table was pretty busy. For people looking for that kind of information. They had heard about FirstNet, and he was somebody who was actually from the company representing AT&T and telling them about it. And it was interesting to see that they had some good traffic there, and good interest and things like that. And I think, again, this goes beyond brands and trademark names. I think what's important is the technology itself and the people who come together to make the technology work, and for the purpose they dedicate it to. And I think that's the way we have to look at it. And I think you made a good point with Verizon. They weren't saying, well, it should have been us, and we're not going to help them because they took our ball and they're walking away. Rather, it's, what? This has to be done right. And the best and safest way to do it is for simply there to be one provider that can dedicate all their time and effort, to it.
Yeah,
and I give credit for that.
Yeah, and all things being fair, everybody had a chance to bid on
right.
This public-private partnership. And what's other exciting is that we've often seen that it was always frustrating that people would see youngsters out there with their smart devices and everything, and they had better technology than we as public safety did. And now that's kind of changed, where the AT&T FirstNet is actually making that happen, so that public safety does have those capabilities. And this is all about data. And so what FirstNet does as a priority is it provides a national public safety, or a nationwide public safety data network. That's really what the priority of FirstNet was, because now we're seeing more and more, a lot of the things that we do is really transmitted by data. We're seeing the real-time situational awareness, if it's streaming from a drone, or if it's the connection between the CAD and dispatch. And then we have the ability also, they're doing what's called mission critical push to talk, which means that you have devices. So let's go back to the Nextel days for a minute, is because most people understand Nextel with the push to talk. Now imagine that's on your phone devices, and you have push to talk in groups that have that priority and preemption. So that you get that transmission back and forth, as well as your data and your text. So that's where it starts to really transform this whole thing. And then, because it's a public-private partnership, see, this is one of those things where if this had been done as a government project in and of itself, the amount of money to build this network nationwide would have been inconceivable. And what this does also is, because it's part of AT&T and a bigger network, it creates what they call an evergreening process, which means as the technology changes, public safety is able to take advantage of that without having to put more money into the network. So for example, as we move to 5G, so does FirstNet, because it's part of that AT&T network. So that's the value of this public-private partnership. Whereas if the government built it, we'd have to go back into a whole new refresh and try to get funding for that. And in these times, that's not a good thing to go looking for.
Right. And build out the infrastructure to support it.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, every community, and you have to go through the zoning and like that. So now you have the one company that packages the whole thing for us and makes it available. And again, every tool that we can get to public safety, every tool that has been proven and works, is a tool that public safety should use. You can take it back to the first pry bar. You can take it back to the first version of the Halligan. We now have the new Nesta bar. We now have pneumatic tools on batteries. We don't need generators and the hoses and hydraulic fluid or vegetable are going every place. I mean, most of the tools in my in my garage. Most of my hand tools are 18-volt battery operated. And I'm not used to not having to carry a cord with me and find a place to plug it in when I work
Yeah,
outside the house.
it's wonderful.
It is.
Well, I mean, think back though, Steve. Think about, our first radio, our first computer. Unfortunately, you and I weren't here to see the first radio, I don't think.
No.
But
But
we were here to see the first computer.
how about, well, that's when I started in 83 with Commodore. That's where I started in 83 with Commodore. And, and
Yeah, we're dating ourselves again. So I was like Texas Instrument TI 99.
All right. Yeah, sure. I remember the TI 99 very clearly. Yeah, when I got my first job in here in South Florida, one of the things they liked is I had computer experience, and they had one of the first IBM AT desktops. I think they paid $3,800 for it then, and it had just a 5-inch floppy in it. No hard drive. Actually, 2 5-inch drives, one to play and one to record on.
Right.
And they had purchased the software for synagogue management, and it had like 8 discs in it. And I said, well, I don't have that kind of a computer. I have a floppy drive, but it won't read this. He goes, well, just take the notebook and read all the pages. And when you get back down here on August 1st, you can start printing it. Well, that's what I did. I read every page in it when I went back home to New York. And then we flew down. I flew down. My wife stayed up north for 3 weeks. So every night after everybody in the office went, I went into the bookkeeper's office to teach myself DOS first. I had to teach myself DOS. Yeah. Then I learned how to use the management program, and then I kept learning. People say to me today, because I still do side work I do consulting for consumers and small businesses on computer types and malware problems and viruses. And they say, well, how many classes did you take? How many years have you gone to school for this? I said, not a day. I never took a class. I didn't do anything online. I just learned from experience and doing it. And
yeah, you're like me. I did the same thing. One thing for me is I was a career firefighter, so I had 24-hour shifts. So I would spend the latter part of it learning how to do, the DOS, learning how to do basic programming and different things. Looked at some of the new programs that came out as far as how to do database management and that kind of stuff. And I remember the department got an HP 150.
I remember those.
And it had a thermal printer out of the top of it. That's all it was. And I'd gotten into, I think it was a program called PFS. I don't know if you remember that one, a very simple flat database program. Okay. But what it did is it gave you the ability to start putting information in now and doing crosstab reports and that kind of stuff. And I had gotten through and said, gosh, I wonder if I can automate this training stuff. And so I took the stuff down to our IT department, and they said, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, if you're like me, I'm sitting there looking at it, and logic's telling me, you're saying it can't be done. I think it can be done. So 2 weeks later, sure enough, I printed the crosstab report and went down to IT, and they said, can you tell us how you did that? So, and later in my life, it would come back to haunt me a little bit because I was, hold on a second.
Sure.
Okay, I think I'm back to normal here.
Okay.
So,
not a problem. But yeah, I think those of us who like a challenge in life will always gravitate to, that's interesting. I wonder how that works, or why is that happening? And we start gravitating, and that becomes a passion. And then we try to learn as much about it as we can. And I think, we've seen, as the old joke goes, the 2 things that firefighters dislike the most are status quo and change.
That's right.
And yet we don't use horses to pull our apparatus anymore. Yeah. We don't need steamers. But even with where we are today in this part of the 21st century, there's still improvements that we can bring to bear. And we have to, if we're dedicating ourselves to public safety and we take that oath and we accept that badge, then we have to be open-minded to say, hey, there's going to be changes in the way we do our jobs, and we're going to learn those changes. And we may not necessarily agree with them all the time, but if that's part of our job, that's what we have to do, because our job is to be out here for the people in this community.
Yeah, what's that saying? 200 years of progress unimpeded by, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress.
Right. I haven't heard that in a long time. Yeah, very true. Well, I'll tell you something, Chief. As always, it's always great talking with you, and you bring such important and pertinent information to our program and to our listeners and viewers. And I know that it probably won't be long before, because you and I kind of try to stay in touch. Uh, and I got to go back and actually, I got to thank you for the email you sent me when you hadn't heard from me and you were concerned, and that meant a great deal to me. It really did, because I kind of fell off the radar very quickly when I got sick so quickly, and to know that somebody out there was really concerned and shared that meant a great deal to me, and I sincerely appreciate it. I consider you a
Well,
dear friend.
we're all in this together. And, one of the things, one of the persons asked me the other day, they said, so what's one of the things that you treasure the most from your experiences, your career? And I said, it's the friendships I've created along the way.
Absolutely.
It's, having being on here today with you it's more fun than it is any way of work, because of what we're able to share, our common interest, and then our genuine concern to share what we can to help the others that are out there that are trying to learn, that want to do better. And our job here, I think, is to share information and encourage them. Um, Keep pushing. Keep pushing for change to make the situation better. And I'll go back and I'll say something about technology for a second. Don't do technology just for technology's sake. Explore technology that can enhance what you do. Either it makes it safer or it makes you better at what you do. And when you find that solution, then go after it. And if you're a chief out there listening, challenge your firefighters to come up with new ideas, to challenge you to move forward. And don't say, why shouldn't I do this? Ask them why we should do it. And if they have a compelling case, support them, because they'll take you a far long way. There's very few things in my career, if anything, that I've done by myself. It's been through the work and networking with others.
Very true. Most important. Most important. Well, Chief, again, it's a pleasure to have you with us. We always treasure our time together, and I look forward a few months down the line to you letting me know, hey, Steve, I got some new stuff for you and your listeners.
Yeah, it's changing a lot. I mean, I think that, looking down the road, I think one of the exciting things ahead that I see is autonomous fire trucks. Because I believe we know that there are a lot of accidents that are occurred by people that are driving a little too fast or get excited, get nervous. And imagine if you've got an autonomous fire truck now that will maintain a speed limit that you set, that's prescribed safety, and doesn't go over, doesn't get excited about emergencies. And then hopefully we have connected vehicles, that the autonomous vehicle, as it's traveling, the connected vehicles around us can stop and we won't have accidents. So again, the ways that we can prevent firefighter line of deaths and injuries is going to be key in how we go forward.
Right. I'm sure you've seen the video of that flying fire apparatus.
Oh
One that
yeah.
has the
I
big
mean,
four
well,
cannons.
just wait. Just look at the what they call now the advanced air mobility is going to be air ambulances that are unmanned aerial aircraft, and lots ahead of us.
Right, there is. There is. Well, look how we use robots to bring people out of a building safely. So we don't have to put a person in there. The robot can grab hold of them, pull them by the leg or pant leg, and get them out of a building. And
Well, we didn't talk about this. One of the new trends is police and fire are using drones to go in buildings and start looking at the situations before we go in. So imagine a police officer being able to go into a room, and there was a thing on TV in Atlanta. A drone went into a room of a murder suspect. The murder suspect saw the drone, put his hands on his head, and walked out of the building and surrendered.
that was worth it.
So a lot more to come, and
A
there's so
lot
much
more.
more to talk about.
Great, great. Well, again, my sincere thanks. Be well, stay healthy, stay well. Did you get your shot yet?
No, not yet.
Yeah, same here. I'm on multiple lists, but still waiting.
I'm
Still
not. I'm not technically a responder anymore, so I don't reach that priority
right.
level of.
Same thing here. I just reached the age level, just not not the responder level anymore. All right, Chief. Stay well, stay healthy. Always welcome to come back. Just let me know whenever we have new material to cover, and it'll be my pleasure to sit down and talk with you again.
Thanks, and thanks to all your sponsors that help make your program a reality, and all the listeners out there. Thanks for listening to Steve.
Thank you very much, Chief. Take care. Folks, we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned.